It's been a while since we've done a video like this on this channel.
That's right.
But we wanted to bring a couple values in Dynasty football that we think you should go and try and take advantage of. These players who might not have broken out just yet, but we see great futures for them. We're going to give you 2 players, one each, that we are personally trying to trade for right now in Dynasty football. Now, we're going to try and do these videos a little bit more often as it's, in season. It's hard to really wrap your mind around Dynasty just yet. But I think that we have 2 really good options here for you guys to consider going to trade for. Now, these aren't like superstar players, but they're players that are under the wraps that we think could be actually really good sneaky values. So,
agreed.
I'll go with my first player. And before I say my first player, I just wanted to say a couple honorable mentions that I was considering for this video. It was really hard. Like, I probably could have brought like 4. But honorable mentions, J.K. Dobbins, Christian Watson, Jamison Williams, Calvin Ridley, Tyquan Thornton, and Treylon Burks, of course. But my first buy low right now in Dynasty, trade for Alec Pierce. Okay. As the community currently stands with Alec Pierce, he is the wide receiver 54. Okay, so according to the community's eyes, that's where they rank him. I currently have him ranked as my wide receiver 43. So I'm more than 11 spots higher than the community on Alec Pierce. Let's talk about Alec Pierce. I mean, firstly, this team needs him to produce. And not only do they need him to produce, they need him to produce earlier rather than later. Let's review this wide receiver room together. You and I, let's look at this wide receiver room together.
Yeah, together, right here.
Let's look at the Colts wide receivers outside of Pittman and Pierce. You have Paris Campbell, 25 years old, multiple injuries that have ended his seasons.
Yeah.
He has a career high of 24 targets on a year.
Right.
Okay. You have Ashton Doolin, who is 25 years old. He has a career high of 22 targets on a year.
Yeah.
You have Mike Strachan. I don't even know if I'm saying that right. 25 years old. Career high 6 targets on a year. If you combined all 3 of these wide receivers, their career high in targets combined wouldn't be enough for a wide receiver 2 on any team in the NFL, if we're 100% honest, right? Now let's look at this year, and we'll look at the target leaders through 4 weeks for this team. Michael Pittman, the clear alpha, getting most of the targets, 9.3 per game. And then if you look at it after that, it's really just a mix of a bunch of players. Alec Pierce is the second highest with 4.3. Then you got Doolin and Granson and Mo Alley Cox and Paris Campbell on this list. So it's really like a mix of a bunch of players, and they're almost screaming, asking for one of these players to stand out. Now, you can see Paris Campbell at the bottom here, 3 targets per game. I want to show you the snap percentages for this wide receiver room so far through 4 weeks.
Right.
Michael Pittman obviously dominating the snap percentages, but look at Paris Campbell here. Right now, Paris Campbell is currently averaging 78% of the snap share and has 3 targets per game. Alec Pierce, meanwhile, is averaging 46% of the snaps and is already averaging more than 1 more target per game than Paris Campbell. I fully anticipate Paris Campbell's snap percentage to continually decline over the next 3 to 4 weeks, and in return, I think you're going to see Alec Pierce's snap percentage continue to rise to eventually that 70% mark.
Right.
If Pierce right now is averaging 4.4 targets per game and is only playing 46% of the snaps, what could he do if he gets out on the field and starts running for 70% of those snaps? When you look at this wide receiver room, it is so obvious that they need a wide receiver like Alec Pierce. And I think he has shown flashes. I think it's fair to say if you watch him in the limited action he's had, he has shown flashes with the small amount of opportunities he's been given so far. Now, if you pull him up on Sleeper and you just look at the points, it's not going to be all that impressive. But there's a couple of things that you have to keep in mind here. He had a concussion in week 1, so he wasn't able to finish week 1's game. He had a concussion. He did not return, and he didn't play week 2 as well because of that concussion. So at least the Colts know how to keep out players who have concussions, right? So it's really hard to take into account before week 3 of his season thus far because of that concussion. If you look at weeks 3 to 4 versus Kansas City and Tennessee, he's had a couple opportunities and he's looked pretty good with those. Weeks 3 to 4 averages right now, he's averaging 5.5 targets, 3.5 receptions, over 70 yards, and yards per catch. He's averaging around 20 yards per catch. I mean, you can see the Colts' plan for Alec Pierce. It's really, there's a couple things in particular that they're hoping to get out of him. the screen game, the slant game to use his speed. Because by the way, according to Player Profiler, his speed score is in the 95th percentile.
Right.
And also the long balls with the jump ball. Like when I go back and I looked at my scouting report for Alec Pierce, one thing in particular stood out, Badake, and I'm sure that you'll remember this.
That's right.
The strongest hands in the class were Alec Pierce. He had the strongest hands in the class when he was in one-on-one situations, jump ball scenarios, more times than often at an extremely high rate. He would come down with the ball.
Yes.
He's an incredible jump ball wide receiver. And you can see that in his limited action versus Kansas City and Tennessee. They are willing to get him involved, firstly, in the slant game, but secondly, down the field for big plays. They want Alec Pierce with his size and his speed to be able to stretch the field for this team. And I don't think we've seen anywhere near what his involvement could be for this offense just yet. I said he was in the 95th percentile for his speed score. His catch radius is in the 96th percentile. So again, how could he be used? Track star, strongest hands in the class, one-on-one situations he wins, great size. He can be used in deep balls, in the red zone. He can be used on screens and slants. His role should continue to grow for a team who is screaming out, asking for someone to step up.
Please, anyone.
And lastly, Matt Ryan, the trust with Matt Ryan is growing on a weekly basis. I mean, Matt Ryan has been commenting on Alec Pierce's game and saying that his confidence, Alec Pierce's, will grow throughout the year. But most recently, this last week, Matt had this to say about Pierce. He says, Pierce is doing a good job in learning how to get open within the timing of a play at the NFL level. So, and I agree. I mean, watching the last couple of weeks, you can see how he can win in the NFL. I would highly encourage people to go watch the small sample size that we have of Alec Pierce in week 3 versus Kansas City and week 4 versus Tennessee. Go watch the small sample size that we've been given so far from Alec Pierce, and you can see exactly what I'm talking about. You can see how they plan to use him. With Jonathan Taylor's injury, what could that mean? What could that mean for this wide receiver room? Does it mean that Alec Pierce is going to be given more opportunities earlier than maybe anticipated? Maybe. And it's very obvious to see how he can win in the NFL. If the targets come, we could see a really, really good finish. And lastly, it really doesn't cost much at all to go out and buy Alec Pierce.
No.
This isn't a top 20 wide receiver. This isn't a top 30, 40 wide receiver, not even a top 50 wide receiver according to the community right now. He's wide receiver 54. So I think you, in like a 2023, people love this class. I think you might be able to consider a early third in 2023 plus a player, that has, somewhat limited upside on your bench.
Right.
You might have to do a late second you could consider. But a couple other players that are around the same value according to the community right now that I think you can explore in a trade or a package: Rondale Moore, Jamal Williams with his current role, Alexander Madison, Cordero Patterson. I know you just went on IR, so that's a little bit more difficult. Dawson Knox, Tyler Boyd. I think Tyler Lockett is an incredible, go find a team competing right now and give them Tyler Lockett and get back Alec Pierce. I think that's a huge 200 IQ play. Henderson's interesting. Jacoby Myers is interesting. So those are just some names that I wanted to throw out. Do what you can. Try and get these values right now before the breakout happens. It's going to be nearly impossible to trade for Olave or Garrett Wilson right now, or Drake London. That's just the reality.
Agreed.
But the draft capital is there for Alec Pierce. He was a second-round pick. They like him. They've spoken very highly of him. And honestly, I think if the concussion wasn't there, maybe he's already broken out by this point.
Maybe.
I think in the next 3 to 4 weeks, we will see more and more signs of what we've seen in weeks 3 and 4. I mean, right now, 9-point game, 12-point game. I think we're going to continue to see those sort of games because of how necessary he is to this offense and how he can win in the NFL. So, Alec Pierce, I already have him in a ton of leagues. I don't know if you remember, he was my favorite player in the early second round of rookie drafts this year. So I have him in a ton of places, but I think you can go get him if certain owners are impatient.
Yeah, I think it's very interesting. Alec Pierce, it's like you said, you were saying they need an option, specifically this week. It can be a good jump because they play Thursday night when we record this. We're recording this before Thursday night game.
Yeah.
And we can actually see the opportunity for Matt Ryan to spread the ball out without Jonathan Taylor and how this offense can operate. So
Yeah.
Alec Pierce,
And I think we can't underestimate that what I brought up about the snap shares as well. I just want to highlight that one more time. For Paris Campbell to be on the field 78% of the time and to not be targeted or prioritized at all, that is just screaming change will come. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
love the take,
Thanks.
and I'll bring you
bud.
to my buy low.
Come
Get
on.
him now. And I hate when it's a guy from my team, but it's Wan'Dale Robinson for the New York Football Giants. Look, something special is going to happen, Wanda, and you just have to wait. Current community ADP wide receiver 57. So it's actually really around the same area of Alec Pierce. My current Dynasty ranking is actually 52. So it's not too far off. I really like Wan'Dale Robinson. And the one thing I want to, remind you of is let's start from the beginning. He was taken in the second round out of Kentucky to the Giants. This was Brian Dable and Joe Shane's first offensive weapon in their new system, which is massive. And Zach can absolutely tell you this. I wasn't a fan of Wan'Dale. It was really small. It was he was shifty. It was okay. I was agreeing with Zach's thought process of how all these small wide receivers couldn't get the production like the Wan'Dales or the Rondales, the Rondale Moores, all these smaller guys.
Right.
But this is a very, very specific way that they are building this offense. And as a Giants fan, I can really dive deep into helping you guys understand, but that's not the point of this take, right? So even in preseason, he was a talk of the town. Those already saying he was ahead of Kenny G. He was ahead of Kadarius Toney. He was ahead of everyone that was on this offense because this is the guy that they loved and evaluated and wanted to immediately give the work to, right?
Yeah.
So now we fast forward into season, week 1, Giants versus the Titans. Literally one of the first plays of the game. Pass to Wan'Dale, 15 yards. He rolls his ankle or something, hits his knee, something weird like that. And he's been out ever since. Only played literally a handful of snaps in the NFL so far. Yeah. So the utilization is very specific in the way they are creating this offense around Daniel Jones and the play calling with Matt Kafka coming from the Kansas City Chiefs. This is a great opportunity for Wan'Dale Robinson to really be this guy. I want to remind you that maybe you don't remember this, but you said Wan'Dale Robinson was a slower Tyreek Hill. The way he could be utilized, the way that they are, the way that he can bring explosiveness to the field. Yeah. I think that's how Wan'Dale Robinson could be. That's who he can potentially be. So now we look in season, and who is leading the Giants team in receptions, in yards, in the whole thing, obviously outside of Saquon? It's Richie James, who steps up for Wan'Dale Robinson. And the little graph can come up on the screen where you can see all from weeks 1 to 4, 6 targets week 1, 6 targets week 2, 5 targets week 3, getting over 10 fantasy points nearly each game. Week 4, Daniel Jones only threw the ball 8 times, to be completely honest with you. So they weren't even throwing the ball there. Right. They were running in, doing bootlegs with Danny Dimes. So I can only imagine what this production that Wan'Dale Robinson could have had with these targets, with these opportunities. And it's kind of like Alec Pierce. I wonder if he never got injured. We would have a whole different perspective, a whole different conversation about who Wan'Dale Robinson is. Maybe he would have been a waiver wire pickup. Maybe in redraft leagues, hypothetically, maybe he would have been on that list really early on, where that's not the case right now. Yeah. And like I said before, I want to remind you, they drafted this guy in the second round, the first wide receiver, the first offensive player, skilled player for this Joe Shane and Brian Dable's offense. And mind you, he is starting over a guy named Kenny G, who we signed 4 years, $72 million, which is probably the worst signing in all off. It's terrible. You know how many targets he has? 6 targets in 4 games. He caught 2 of those 6 targets. Terrible. You know how many times Kadarius Toney has played? Can he stay healthy? You tell me. He can't stay healthy. Yeah. He can't do it. He's missed 2 games so far. He only caught 2 out of 3 targets. And Sterling Shepard, as always, as much as I love Sterling, I love the man. If he can just stay healthy, he would have been phenomenal. If he could have just stayed healthy his whole career. He's out for the season. There's no one else on this team that can step up. Darius Slayton, we wanted to trade him. David Sills, we started him over Kenny G. I mean, Wan'Dale Robinson has to come sooner rather than later. And I go back to it once again. I trust and I believe in the thought process of how Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen is building this offense. I mean, I sound like a broken record. Wan'Dale Robinson was a first offensive player. I can't stress that enough, how big that is for this team and for this organization to continue to take off. And even if they bring in a big wide receiver next year, even if they get rid of Kenny G and hypothetically we get Jordan Addison or Kayshon Boutte or Josh Downs in 2023, whoever it is, I don't think that's actually taken away from Wan'Dale. That's helping him in the slot, in the flat, in the way that he can be utilized in jet sweeps, his quick twitchiness. You know, we also kind of compared him to Kadarius Toney. It's like, why the hell are you drafting 2 Kadarius Toneys?
Yeah, that was my biggest concern was Toney.
was Kadarius Toney. And I've said this before in many live streams, in many videos, it does not matter who the hell was on this team before Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll came on. Because you can see we're paying guys $72 million to only get on the field, to only catch the ball twice so far in 4 games. Yeah. You know, like there was quote unquote talks with Kadarius Toney being traded already, like the first weeks they got there. So they're going to be moving people the way that, you know, Giants fans aren't maybe really excited or not used to, and be operating things. So I am really confident in what Wan'Dale Robinson can do, who he can be. If you can trade guys like, you know, kind of like in the same area, like Zach said, all those guys, Rondale Moore, Jamal Williams, Alexander Madison, Cordell Patterson, once again, a little bit harder, Tyler Boyd, Tyler Lockett, Darrell Henderson, Jacoby Myers. Also, I just did a trade. Literally, when I was doing this take, I sent all the offers that I could in the leagues that I don't have Wan'Dale, and I just traded Nico Collins for Wan'Dale Robinson, right? So if you can get Nico, I would personally do Calvin Ridley. I know some people, maybe you can do a package, a Hunter Renfrow, a Tyler Algier. There's so many names that you can go and try and get Wan'Dale Robinson, and it's not going to hurt. Same thing with Zach, a late second, an early third, a mid-third, whatever the case may be, maybe even later than the late second. You know, maybe an early third to a mid-third, because Wan'Dale Robinson was going at some points, maybe early on in the offseason, he was going in the late third, and then he kind of bumped up to the middle, early third. So maybe
he ended up being like a third-round pick in 2022 anyway, and people value the 23 class over that class. So.
Exactly. So, once again, Wan'Dale Robinson, fantastic guy, quick shiftiness, a guy that's going to get a lot of targets. Mind you, he could be reuniting with Will Levis. Not saying I want him. Not saying I want Will Levis to come to the Giants.
Not if you guys keep winning games.
Unless we keep winning games, which is crazy. Hey, we might have Danny Dimes for a couple more years. Who knows? But I love Wan'Dale Robinson. Try and get him on the low. Yeah, I think it's interesting because both of these players are in situations where like the opportunity is so clear, the pathway is so easy to see. Yeah. And right now, because of certain scenarios beyond their control, they haven't been able to seize those opportunities. And I think they definitely could. And you know, you talked about how, you know, it doesn't matter who was there before Joe and Daboll. And I think the reason, just to stress that, why that's so important is because as a coach, as a GM, you're not judged based off of what was there. You're judged based off of what you bring in and how you develop a team. So for Daboll and Joe, as good as Kadarius Toney is, it doesn't matter what happens with his career. They'll never be judged on that. They'll be judged off of what they do with Wan'Dale Robinson. Why did you choose? I mean, we even had like, not a fight, but we had like a disagreement about George Pickens on a live stream. Yeah. And remember I said, like, I cannot believe that all these teams picked. I mean, I was like, surely you're upset that, you know, the Giants chose Wan'Dale over George Pickens. And the reason why I'm bringing that up is because, like, there's so much on the line here for the Giants. Like, they need to prove that this is why, with the people who were brought into the organization, why they made this move. So yeah, I agree. And we're winning games, by the way. Yeah. I'm not saying we're amazing, but we're winning games with no one. Yeah. And if Wan'Dale Robinson can just be that little spark.
Is he going to be back? When is he back?
I don't know. Every single freaking week is day to day. Okay. And I was like, just put him on IR and say he's not going to be back for 4 weeks. So I know. But every single week right now, he said he's making progress. We don't know if he's going to play in week 5.
I'm just reading something from the New York Post. It says it does not look promising that Kenny Golladay will be available Sunday against the Packers. Brian Daboll says, but Wan'Dale Robinson and Toney are making progress.
Mm-hmm.
So that
we might not even have Daniel Jones. We might not even have a quarterback for week 5. So we'll see.
Yeah. Anyway, guys, these are a couple players. I mean, look, we could have made so many, but these are a couple players that we wanted to bring to you that we saw clear values in.
Yeah.
So why don't you comment down below? Let us know what you think. Feel free to like the video, subscribe, and tell us what you like or dislike about the takes, or if there's a value out there that you're wanting to snatch up and buy. So huge love. Enjoy the rest of your week. This should be out, tonight. I think we'll release it our time. So huge love. Enjoy the rest of your week. Good luck.
Yo, what's good? Thanks for watching. We got a lot more videos.
A lot more.
If you want more videos,
watch it.
You can also subscribe
right now
if you want to.
You need to.
And lastly, don't forget that you can sign up to support the show and get exclusive content by going to patreon.com/FantasyLand fam.